Based on my last video's performance, you guys seem to really enjoy these rankings. So, I'm sure all of you were thinking, Spikeaholic, how are you going to follow up that absolute banger of a ranking video? Well, that question has a very simple answer. Today, we are ranking every monster in R.E.P.O based on a couple things, namely sound design, model design, and primarily gameplay, just the same as my Lethal Company video. And at the bottom of the list, starting off our F tier, goes to one that I've seen a lot of hate for online, the Upscream. The Upscream is this weird-looking creature that appears kind of like a mutant human, and let me tell you, if you've ever played R.E.P.O before, you know just how much of a pain these guys can be. Let's start with the negatives. This enemy is small, making him hard to grab or hit with weapons, and he's incredibly quiet, making it hard to notice him until you're already being attacked. If an Upscream finds you, and let's face it, it'll likely find you before you can find it, this enemy has the very real possibility of just grabbing you and tossing you into a pit. And if it doesn't do that, it can just stun lock you in a room, no matter how many upgrades you have, and combo you until you're dead. No other enemy in the game suffers from these issues to the same extent as this one. It isn't even a good looking design or anything, it's just kinda there. Remember how I said we were starting with the negatives? That's kinda all this monster has. It needs some real fixes if it wants to be improved. But no need to get into all that right now, we still have 28 more monsters to rank. Spot 28 goes to the gnomes. While not very likely to be the ones to end your run, these guys are so annoying that they make you want to quit the game anyway. These guys spawn in small groups and pretty much have one goal: make your life as hard as possible. Gnomes have some of the same issues as the Upscream, in that they're tiny and hard to grab, but at least they won't fling you around a room until you die. Rather than targeting the player, gnomes often target loot inside of your cart. This is very problematic because, as I said before, they spawn in groups. Oftentimes, if you encounter a horde of gnomes, you can get rid of them pretty fast, but if you don't notice them right away, or if you're far away from your cart, there's a very real chance that they will hop in your cart and destroy everything you own. It's very frustrating to go from having all of the money you need for your quota to practically nothing just because you were hiding from another monster. Thankfully, they have the benefit of being able to be picked up at 0 strength, and they die from being smashed on anything. So as long as you grab them, most of the time, they're nothing but a bit of an annoyance. At spot 27, we have the Peeper. If you think this guy isn't an absolute nuisance, hop on a late game run and see what happens. Early on, if you encounter one of these, all you have to do is simply walk out of the line of sight. No issue. The problems arise when there's many more monsters around on higher levels. What the Peeper does is when you're within its line of sight, it forces your camera to point towards it until you break that line of sight. They will also make you drop whatever valuables you're currently holding, so if you're in a scenario where a Peeper has you looking at it on a later level, your only hope is to quickly pull out a gun or another ranged weapon and shoot it, as it does have very low health. Though, if you are slow, it can result in a quick and painful death. While it isn't necessarily deadly by itself, it's still a major annoyance and one that I'm personally not too fond of. At spot 26, I'd say we move up to the D tier of enemies, and the first enemy in this tier is the Loom, especially as a primarily solo player. This enemy is an absolute slog to deal with. She'll always know your exact location and will slowly move towards you the entire time she's alive. Unlike other enemies, where you can just avoid them simply by not going into the area that they're standing and avoiding their line of sight, she'll just follow you around and be a pain in your ass. She's just so tedious to deal with that she loses her fear factor very quickly. Her model is phenomenal. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that she's one of the best looking monsters in the game. I just wish she behaved differently because she has so much potential. At spot number 25, we have Bella. Not a bad idea, but my god is it rage-inducing. Bella roams the area as a ghost girl riding her bike, but if you get in the way, she'll ring her bell. When she rings it 3 times, she goes absolutely berserk on you, and it's practically impossible to outrun her. Well, this sounds like a cool idea for an enemy. She doesn't attack you if she sees you, only if you get in her way. This would be incredible if it worked properly. I and a lot of others have struggled to deal with this enemy due to its somewhat buggy nature. Sometimes she'll get aggressive on you when you weren't directly in her way, sometimes you're avoiding a huntsman and you physically cannot sprint away or you will die to him, and countless other scenarios where she'll get angry and it simply doesn't feel like the player's fault. I don't hate this enemy. In fact, in most cases, I feel like she can be enjoyable enough and is mostly an ignorable enemy. But these moments that feel outside of the player's agency feel so bad that I decided to put her down here. At spot 24, I have what I think is going to be a pretty controversial pick. I have the Apex Predator. If there was an enemy that rage baits you the hardest, this guy would be far and away the best at it. The Apex Predator spawns in as an innocent looking duck, small, harmless, and actually kind of cute. It'll just follow you around for a bit, jumping in the way of your grabber, but if you accidentally grab it, it'll transform into this freaky flying duck monster thing that deals a lot of damage and is practically impossible to hide from. The biggest reason this guy's so low on this list isn't because the Apex Predator form feels unfair or anything like that, but it's because when you have a duck following you around, it's one of the worst experiences in REPO. You are forced to be super careful where you click, as it follows where your crosshair is. It will also enrage if taking any damage at all, so if it gets caught in the crossfire of some other enemy engagements, this duck will transform and cause you trouble anyway. While it is incredibly cute, I'm gonna have to put it this far down on this list, it just makes me really angry. Spot 23 has to go to the Rugrat. This humanoid baby monster is just really strange. When it sees a player, it looks for the nearest piece of loot to grab and throw at them, destroying it in the process. This can be really annoying for a couple of reasons. The first one obviously being that it destroys your loot, but the second one being that, just like gnomes, it can take stuff from your cart and damage it. And I can see this not being too big of an issue with bigger teams, but when playing solo or even as a duo, there are times where you're just not near your cart. I quite do like the model though. This guy is just really silly looking all around. Imagine having a baby and it looks like that. I'm putting that fella up for adoption. Anyway, this enemy behaves really strangely when there's no scrap around. Rather than just trying to attack the player or something, it just kinda does nothing. This makes the Rugrat a useless threat on the way back to your truck from the extraction zone. In a way, it feels kind of unfinished behavior. I don't know, it's just really awkward. Overall, it's not the worst, especially since you can just toss it around when you have 4 strength. Let's move on. At this point, I can't say that I dislike any of the other monsters on this list, so we're just gonna jump into the C tier. And starting us off here, on spot number 22, we have the Bangers. These guys are very similar to the gnomes, but with a few key differences that makes them so far above them. While they do spawn in groups and are very small, one of the biggest differences is that they target the player rather than your loot. This already makes them significantly better to deal with, because they won't just explode your cart if you're not near it. I also like their models a lot more. Something about a walking skull bomb is just so perfectly fitting for this game. They are still somewhat annoying, however, due to the fact that they explode. When a banger sees you, its fuse will light and they'll try to suicide bomb you. The most effective way to deal with them is to just toss them away, but you have to be super careful of where you throw them because they explode on death as well. They aren't exactly a super big threat, just kind of a nuisance to deal with, and I don't feel like they add a lot to the depth of the gameplay, but I like them, so they're here. At spot 21, a monster slightly less annoying, but still lacking depth, we have the Reaper. This monster looks like a scarecrow, and its face is honestly really creepy when you look at it up close. Anyway, when this monster sees a player, it'll charge at them, swinging its blades incredibly fast, pursuing them either until they're dead, or the scarecrow just gives up. Certainly very simple behavior, and they're a very slow enemy, so they really shouldn't be ending too many of your runs. I think the biggest issue I have with the Reaper is that it's just boring. Since it is so slow, if you need it to get out of the way so you can go down a path, you'll be waiting a really long time for it to walk. The biggest worry with the Reaper is that your cart gets in the way and it chops up your loot. But other than that, this is just your average enemy, not too much else to say about it. At number 20, we have this cute little thing, Elsa. The thing about Elsa is that she's very similar to the Apex Predator, just better in every single way. She also starts off as this cute little animal and transforms into something much more deadly. Though I'll admit Elsa's transformation is much funnier looking than the Apex Predator, the way that they transform is also different. If you remember from the Apex Predator, if you click it, it gets mad. Well, this is the other way with Elsa. She'll come up to you in her cute little dog form, and if you don't pet her, she'll turn into this comically buff dog and chase you relentlessly. Let me explain why this is better. To start, she doesn't jump in your crosshair trying to make you accidentally make her mad. 2. Her aggressive form is really fun to try to evade and much more enjoyable than the Apex Predator. And 3, the biggest one, is probably that it's just so much nicer to have to click on something rather than avoid clicking on something. The reason why she's still so low on this list is because she does suffer from the same issue of if something else hits her, it will make her aggro onto you, which can just lead to some awful and unfair feeling scenarios. At spot number 19, we have what I think might also be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to have to say the bow tie. Let's talk about what I like about this guy first. I love his design a lot. The caption on the wiki says that it looks like a giant living marshmallow, and I absolutely love that. I also just think that he's a very creative monster idea-wise. When a bow tie spots a player, it'll transform into this fan thing and just blow you around. The problem is that it also blows whatever else might be there around. I'm not a big fan of how it destroys your valuables, although it isn't as bad as other enemies like gnomes. The fan will also push away monsters, which can save your life, but it can also trigger monsters like Elsa and the Apex Predator and make them angry at you. Although this is more of a fault of the design of those enemies rather than the bow tie, I feel like this is a fair spot to put this monster. Spot 18 goes to the animal, and that's just because it's kinda boring. For starters, its model is really disgusting. In fact, it might actually be one of the grossest looking in the game, but in a good way, I think. It looks nice in gameplay. The gameplay itself is nothing to write home about really, it just runs up to the player and goes crazy while not dealing all too much damage. A bit of a nuisance, overall not that interesting. Continuing the theme of enemies that I just don't find interesting, I'm gonna have to go with the Trudge at number 17. If you ever see this guy in your game, you know it's going to be a slog to get anywhere, especially early game when it's hard to outrun his attack and you don't have weapons. The Trudge will slowly roam the map, and when it sees a player, it will pull them in and push them back out, dealing a ton of damage. My main problem with this enemy is that it makes the flow of the game so much slower. If you have to get into a room that a Trudge is blocking, you have to wait an eternity for it to simply get out of the way. Other than that, uninteresting, moving on. And the final enemy that I would consider to be just boring is the Tick, which belongs in spot number 16, just because I feel like it doesn't really do anything once you learn what it does. If the player uses their grabber around the Tick will latch onto them and take a maximum of 100 health. What makes this enemy so lame is that you can just tumble into it to kill it, only costing you 5 HP. I'm also not a big fan of how the game handles explaining the enemy. I feel as if it could be hard for a new player to understand that they're not allowed to grab things when around the Tick, although maybe I'm just underestimating your average new player. And it's at this point where we're going to move out of the C tier and up into the B tier. And this marks the barrier where I consider the monsters to be really fun in most cases and very well designed. And to start us off in the B tier, we have the Spewer. While unremarkable, I definitely wouldn't call it boring. In fact, the idea of a monster infesting you like how it does is super cool. I just think it's too easy to kill and avoid, and you don't get infested all that often by it. I don't like how the acid it forces you to spew out on random intervals damages scrap as much as it does, although I do like how you can use it to damage and sometimes even kill monsters. Helpful sometimes, annoying others. At spot 14, I'm gonna have to give it to the Head Grab. Definitely one of the stranger looking monsters in R.E.P.O. I mean, how else am I supposed to describe this guy other than gremlin? It behaves like a gremlin too. This monster has this really weird combo attack where it'll try to swipe you into a drop kick that stuns you, which is pretty cool sounding. The main attraction with this enemy is how it will grab your dead friends' heads to enrage itself and power up all of its attacks. My issue with this is that it's impossible for this monster to do this in solo, getting rid of a lot of the novelty just for playing by yourself. At spot 13, I'm going to go with the Mentalist. I'm not too sure what to make of this model. On one hand, it's really goofy, but if you look at it too long, it's definitely on the creepier side, especially in the face. Ugh. When he sees the player and he's close enough to them, he emits an aura that makes things float. After a few seconds, the aura turns red and slams down the player, dealing 50 damage. One issue I have with this enemy is that it's completely silent, so it's really easy to sprint around a corner and just get caught in his attack. I also don't like how he slams down your valuables. He can cause you to lose a lot of money. There's something about the Mentalist that I am just so fond of. Since his eyesight is bad, it can be really fun to try to avoid him while getting around other enemies. And I do like how he picks up other enemies too. At spot number 12, we have the Cleanup Crew. I've seen a lot of hate for this monster online, which I personally don't get at all. While it is a really strong monster, it's also incredibly well designed, and I think it adds to the game whenever you encounter it. The Cleanup Crew is this absolute beast that looks like someone suffered horrific radiation burns and is now this terrifying mutant. I think it has one of the cooler designs in this game, and his attacks are really cool too. He lobs ahead at the player that chases them around until it explodes into a toxic gas. While the designs and concepts are cool, obviously there's some glaring issues with the way that this monster works. For starters, the heads he throws follows you, making this guy feel a lot harder than I personally think that he should. I think he would be perfectly fine if it behaved like a grenade rather than a heat-seeking missile. I also don't like how this monster has 360-degree vision that makes him really hard to just sneak around like you can with other monsters. Moving on to spot 11, I'd like to put the Heart Hugger here. Starting with the design, I believe this enemy has one of the best models in the game. It is seriously grotesque, and you can tell that the developers really spent a lot of time making sure that all of the details were super fleshed out. While I am a sucker for area control enemies, I just don't like how this guy does it. I think he's far too weak to be a true threat to the player. When blasted with this gas, you'll see the Heart Hugger as a friendly creature and float towards it, before getting betrayed and having a ton of damage dealt to you. My problem is that this guy doesn't really ever get a chance to hit you with the gas. It has a very short range and takes time to charge up its attack. So as long as you're paying attention, this is kind of just a nothing enemy. Now we're in the territory where the monsters get a lot stronger design-wise, and this is where I'd like to start the A tier. But first I'd like to say, if you're enjoying the video, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps me out. To start us off in the A tier, at spot number 10, I'm gonna have to put the Shadow Child here. I actually like this design a lot. While a lot of monster designs in REPO are quite goofy and silly, this one's actually kind of scary, but in a way that still fits the style of the game. The Shadow Child doesn't directly attack the player, rather it'll spawn around them, and if you look at it for too long, it'll launch at you and deal 50 damage. I like this type of gameplay a lot, though there are a few negatives that drag it down a bit. When being attacked, it can just teleport away, making it pretty hard to kill and get the orb from, and in general, it just doesn't do all too much, but overall, a strong first entry to the A tier. At number 9, I want to talk about the Robe. The Robe, while incredibly dangerous, does a lot of stuff right. The Robe embodies the feeling of being silent but deadly. I think it's really creepy looking. This guy is just massive and his face is super unsettling. The mechanics are really the highlight here though. When the Robe spots a player, it will begin to stalk them, moving slowly towards the player. It's your job to keep distance between the two of you, but you have to be very careful not to look at its face. If you even glance at that mask for even a short moment, the Robe will get upset and rush at the player, dealing 100 damage when he reaches you. The Robe just feels like a better designed loom, one that feels a lot more fair towards the player. My biggest issue here is that the game doesn't telegraph to the player that they can't look at the Robe. I went many hours without understanding how to survive encounters with this guy, as have a lot of people online. At number 8, I have what may be a surprisingly controversial opinion here, the Hidden. Now before you go leave a comment and tell me that this is the worst video ever and you're unsubscribing, let me just explain myself. I really like the concept of non-lethal enemies. The Hidden deals a whole 0 damage to the player. Instead of hurting you, he will just grab a player and run off with them to a new faraway spot. This has the potential to be a little bit annoying, but if you don't think it's one of the funniest things on the planet when you're with your friends, you are dead wrong. Not only is it hilarious to see your friends get snatched away by an invisible creature, but it can also be helpful at times too. If you're in a dire scenario, it's very possible to just have the Hidden come and take you out of it. What a helpful guy. I haven't talked about his design because, well, there really is none. No model to talk about at all, although he does have very loud footsteps and breathing so you can hear him coming. And it's very easy to just set up a mine or shoot it where you hear the Hidden if you want to get rid of him. Number 7 goes straight to the Birthday Boy, an area control monster that restricts your movement heavily. He lays out a bunch of balloons in an area, usually spanning multiple rooms, and as long as you don't bother him, he will be completely passive to you. But be careful around his balloons, as he gets very aggressive when you pop one of them. Area control like this is so cool, and it reminds me of how the Bunker Spider sets up webs in Lethal Company, except this guy puts down a lot more balloons than that spider does webs. For spot number 6, I'm going to give it to the Gambit. Who doesn't love a bit of gambling? The Gambit is pretty grotesque, all things considered. It has a tiny body and a massive head, and the reason for this huge head is the roulette wheel that's hiding inside. When the Gambit sees a player, it'll sprint at them, grab them, and open their face to reveal this wheel. The wheel has 5 segments on it: green, red, black, white, and yellow. Green heals the player 25 health, red deals 50 damage to the player, white heals you to full, and black will put you at 1 health, and yellow will drop a bag worth 5,000 credits on the ground. While this guy is funny for the whole "let's go gambling" bit, I think there's a lot more to him than that. He can be incredibly helpful in a pinch, and there's ways to avoid getting a bad spin. For example, if you have Tumble Grab and the Gambit is about to land on black and set you to 1 health, you can attack him to interrupt the spin to avoid getting set to 1 health. Though be careful, as interrupting him will make him explode, dealing 60 damage. Overall, I think this is just a really fun monster, and he makes for a really good time. I'm going to say the top 5 on this list all go into the S tier. All of these monsters are integral to the game, and they add so much good to an already great game. And to start off the S tier, at spot number 5, we have a sort of basic enemy, but a really good threat, the Headman. This guy is incredibly dangerous, but not in a way that makes you want to break your computer screen. His design resembles a massive human head that just kind of floats, so that's really creepy to see around. The enemy slowly roams the halls looking for a player, and when it sees one, it opens its mouth wide and rushes at them with incredible speed. When it gets close enough to you, he'll bite with incredible force and deal 50 damage to the player. One thing I like about the Headman is that if you hide from it, it'll search adjacent rooms to try to find where you went, rather than just losing aggro immediately. This makes him feel very realistic and like a much bigger threat. Since he has glowing eyes, spotting this enemy is really easy unless you're in tight corridors. Every game with a headman in it is made insanely better, and while it is kind of simple, I think it does its job so effectively that it deserves top 5. Also, quick little fun fact, the headman was actually the first monster made for R.E.P.O, so that's super cool. Spot number 4 belongs to the chef. Starting with the design, this guy's very silly, but still threatening. His appearance resembles that of a frog with a chef outfit on. Looking at some of the designs in this game, I wonder how a person can even come up with these because they're so unique. Anyway, the chef will hop around looking for a player, and when it sees one, it will pull out these cleavers and jump directly at them. There's a few things I think are really cool about this enemy. The first one being that the frog itself becomes a physics object after he jumps, meaning it'll bounce around and the player can actually pick it up during its attack. And the second one, also the much cooler one, being that after it jumps at the player, it'll attack even if the player moves out of the way. This means that it's very easy to get the frog to help you attack and kill other monsters. All you have to do is line it up and step out of his way. I really like the model, behavior, and gameplay interactions that this enemy has, and that's why I put it so high on the list. For number 3, I'm gonna have to go with the Oogly. So much about this enemy is done just right. Starting with looks, this guy is really creepy, although usually you don't see him up this close in-game unless he's attacking you as he flies at a ceiling level. I really like his massive eyes, but they aren't just for decoration. As he'll fly around circling the room, hunting for a player, there will be a bright spotlight emitting from the Oogly. This is very good design, as it choreographs to the player exactly where they can't stand. And they will be in danger if they do stand there. If you step into the spotlight, the Oogly will swoop down, grab the player, and fly back up with them, dealing a ton of damage. As I've said before, I'm a huge fan of area control enemies. I think it's really fun trying to find new ways to navigate around when something blocks your old path off. So the Oogly is right up my alley, and that's why I placed him at number 3. In the number 2 spot, I'm picking the Clown. This guy has a lot going for him, especially on the design front. This character is absolutely disgusting looking, and I love it. It looks like if you dipped a frog covered in clown makeup into a vat of pure radioactivity and then made it breed with Rudolph the reindeer. As for attacks, the Clown has 2 of them, one complex and one super simple. To start with the simple one, the Clown will walk up to the player as it's attacking and attempt to kick you into a wall. And as for the complex one, do you see that massive red bulb on its nose? Well, that thing can shoot a very deadly laser at any player caught in its line of sight. My favorite part about this attack is that it can be shot up or down based on the player's location, and that determines whether or not you have to jump over it or crouch under it. This monster definitely deserves an S tier for its elite design and super fun combat mechanics. And finally, at the number 1 spot, I'm going to have to put the Huntsman here. There is a lot to like about this guy, starting with the model. The design of this character communicates to the player exactly what he's going to do. A man with bandages on his face? Okay, we know he's blind. And a shotgun? Okay, he's gonna shoot you. The first time you see the Huntsman, you find out very fast that sound is what makes him angry, so anytime that you are around one, try to make as little noise as possible. It can be a bit hard sometimes, as when playing with friends, sometimes you can't help but laugh after seeing someone get their face blown off by this guy. Though if you do make noise, not all is lost, as if you can react fast enough and you're far away enough from the Huntsman, it's very possible to dodge the shot, making you feel like you're in the Matrix. It also has a lot of really nice little details. One of my favorites being the fact that he trips downstairs, so if you need to make a quick getaway, keep that in mind. Overall, I put the Huntsman here because it's a culmination of everything that R.E.P.O is supposed to be. Incredibly funny, really dynamic gameplay that allows the players to show off their skills, and multiple ways to deal with him that don't just involve crouching under something. And that's going to be all from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the ranking. Let me know what you guys think are the best and worst monsters in R.E.P.O in the comments down below. A massive thank you to my members, Reading Zebra, Grail Zero, and Robbie Runner for supporting me and my content. Subscribe, join the Discord, that whole thing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!